Hey everybody, welcome back to Pixel Perfect Podcast. And this time it's only been a week since the last episode, but I feel like a
Mhm.
whole year has gone by.
Yep.
Oh man, I'm Paige. That's
I'm
me.
Erin.
Can't forget the intro, just in case you're new here. If you're new here,
Uh,
welcome.
if you're new here, also, um, we don't address comments while we're doing our thing, but if you have questions at the end, we shall answer them.
Yep. Yeah.
Or comments, we don't care.
See if you have
You
any
know.
shots. Yeah, please share a shot with me. I need it. If you have thoughts you want to share, we'll interact at the end of our discussion. But today we're talking about Edgar Wright movies, which is very exciting.
So we're specifically thinking about Scott Pilgrim, the Cornetto trilogy, and Baby Driver.
Yeah, because those are his things, right? Like I know he's like written on other things. I don't know if he's
He's done
directed on other
he's done
things.
quite a bit.
Yeah, he did. He
Um,
was part of Ant-Man, right?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes. I'm gonna double check that.
I
But
think
like
it
I am
was.
like 99% sure that
Yeah.
he had some sort of involvement in Ant-Man.
Um, before we
Yeah, he was the screenplay. He was one of the screenplay writers
gotcha.
and story developers. Yeah,
I was gonna.
which makes sense because that movie is very Edgar Wright.
I haven't seen it. It's like the one Marvel movie I haven't seen. That and the Hulk movie, from 2008. I haven't seen that either.
There's this moment, and I can't remember if it's a direct cut to cut, but there's this moment where he's talking about how he has like super advanced degrees and intense things, and then he's working at Baskin Robbins, and I'm like, that's the millennial experience right there.
That's so
That's
true.
it. And that's a very Edgar Wright moment to me. Is just that.
Okay, gotcha.
So Edgar Wright obviously has a very distinctive style,
Yeah,
both in writing and in directing, particularly editing. His editing is very fast paced and quick, and there's a lot going on, and
focus
he
on
likes
things you wouldn't expect, like the little things, like the clicking the car key and then ignition, foot to the pedal, or like pulling the draft for like a beer and setting the cup on the counter, like all the little focuses of things that you like wouldn't expect.
very, very detailed focus.
Yeah.
Is Edgar Wright. Um, so as I was saying before we started recording, I could talk about Scott Pilgrim all day long. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. I am always up for watching it.
Yeah, I was like
I
doing like
love
a
it.
personal ranking in my head before we started, and I was like, Scott Pilgrim's definitely my number one. That is
Yeah.
a phenomenal film. I watched it for the first time when I was like a teenager, and then like just this year was like, I haven't seen this forever. I have to watch it, and it was like a whole new appreciation. I'm like, this is just a golden film.
I particularly feel like it's interesting to me because when people talk about the manic pixie dream girl, they automatically go to Ramona Flowers, and there's a challenge I kind of want to make to that a
Yeah,
little bit. So like I feel like Scott Pilgrim is on one level a story about growing up and discovering self-respect and fighting for what you want. And I feel like it's also, on the other hand, from Ramona's perspective, an abuse narrative
mm-hmm.
about basically breaking up with your abuser.
Yeah, absolutely. Gideon's a
And
piece of shit.
yeah, and there's this very interesting kind of, I almost feel like it's actually very accurate in terms of it's exaggerated, obviously. An exaggerated but accurate way of how abusers treat people and then how they treat people when they leave and then
Mm-hmm.
how they um what it's like breaking up with an abuser and finding the next person.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes going back because it can be really hard to leave and for it to stick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole thing too where it's it's she I feel like she has more depth than people give her credit for.
I think
I feel
so.
like she has more going on than I think people give her credit for. And I think that she actually has a narrative and a story and a thing, an arc in there that people don't like to recognize or just don't recognize. And I feel like I wouldn't label her necessarily not a manic pixie dream girl, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think she fits that mold quite as well as people think she does.
Yeah, I
Is
think
basically my point.
she's, like, towing the line a little bit, but I definitely think she has a certain depth and personality to her that other manic pixie dream girls don't have. Like, she exists as her own entity, whereas, like, manic pixie dream girls usually exist as an object of the other person.
Right, and I almost feel like this story is condemning the way men treat her
Mhm.
and the way is fetishized and objectified by the different men. And the whole point is
Yeah.
that Scott has to kind of learn not to do that,
Mhm.
and it condemns all the other men in her life who do that.
Right.
And I almost feel like they're trying. I don't think they're doing it as effectively as they could, but I feel like he's challenging the narrative of the Manifixing Dream Girl. And
I think so. That's where I'd be curious to read more of the comics to see, like, where the story goes.
so it's been a very, very long time since I read the comics. Like I don't remember anything. Um, so the best I can say is I remember them being worse, but I also read
Oh.
them when I was younger, so I wouldn't take my word on anything to do with the manga. So, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like she has her own stuff that she is overcoming, and
Mhm.
many Pixie Dream Girls don't have their own thing that they're overcoming.
Yep.
And yes, it's related to a man, but it's also like you watch it and it feels so relatable and understandable, and it doesn't feel like related to a man in necessarily like a way that is inherently bad.
Mhm.
In terms, it feels like a way that is beneficial to watch, if that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah, I can agree
That's
with
my
that.
defense of Ramona Flowers.
Taking it back to Edgar Wright a little bit, it's actually kind of surprised me that Scott Pilgrim was one of his films. I didn't, it wasn't as obvious to
Really,
me because, like, the Cornetto trilogy really is really obvious that those are each of his films. Like, they're very, very distinct. And, like, I guess I'd have to rewatch Scott Pilgrim because I'm sure there's, like, components I'm missing, but I was like, oh, he did this too. And it does make sense. It just didn't, like, I guess I'm having a hard time remembering examples of his, like, signature filmmaking style in the movie.
Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim back to back, and the editing is very
Is
similar.
it really?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like very much, and there's like the whole thing with the details too, and like so like a really cool detail that I like to think about when it comes to Edgar Wright and Scott Pilgrim is that moment where he gives Todd the wrong coffee
Mhm.
and he gets deveganized.
Yeah.
When he goes through the wall and you actually see the milk in the soy milk, the half and half in the milk in the background before he slams into the table.
Do you really?
Yeah, and that's like Edgar Wright
That's
in a
awesome.
nutshell.
That's fantastic.
And there's definitely that like frantic like and it's the same style of comedy and it's definitely like that the frantic cuts and
Mhm. Like
it's
fast-paced
like
dialogue kinda thing.
yeah, I mean it's definitely like a video game esque
Mhm.
version of Edgar Wright. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Because there's the big focus on like those details, like when he goes to the bathroom and there's a pee bar that goes down.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely having watched them back to back, Scott Pilgrim does feel like distinctive Edgar Wright to me,
Okay. Interesting.
just in a kind of almost like a different fashion.
Yeah, I think I just get distracted by the video game elements, like the
Yeah,
coinage and the swords and, like, the little on-screen graphics and things like that, so I think that just, like, that's what holds my focus the most. I mean, you're much more of, like, a cinephile than I am. I'm just here for the rides.
the editing style is very similar.
Yeah,
Um, and the writing too, if you look at the way characters are developed and what the themes are and what they're talking about, I feel like that's also very Edgar Wright.
that makes sense. When did
Because Edgar Wright is kind of all about like arrested development and getting past that.
Okay, you have to explain that to me because I I thought the term arrested development was, like, just in reference to the show, and then I was watching movies with Mikey earlier and he said something about arrested development as a concept and I was like, "Oh, I'm missing out on something here that I don't know."
Of arrested development is that it's basically like think of it as like stopping develop like you're stuck in like a stage of development.
Oh, okay.
That is my understanding of arrested development, and I could be wrong, but
I
that is my
think you're right
understanding of
about
it.
that because that makes sense in context of the show Arrested Development, where there's, like, the whole cast of characters is these people with, like, stunted personality growth.
It's basically like that, yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at like Scott Pilgrim, he's very obviously that. Shaun of the Dead is very obviously that.
Yes.
Hot Fuzz is that to an extent, and obviously World's
Yeah.
End is very that.
Oh yeah, that's like the whole credo there.
Um, so I feel like he's kind of obsessed, but he just keeps doing it in such different ways that you're like engaged and invested every time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's a lesson that bears repeating anyways because like humans are so bad at bettering themselves sometimes.
And it's interesting the way he does like the different kind of stages where you have like Hot Fuzz where he's such like an overachiever and such a perfectionist,
Mhm.
and that has made him kind of unable to do anything else. So he's in like a perfectionist arrested development stage as
Yeah.
opposed to like Scott Pilgrim who's just like dating a high schooler.
Yeah. Not cool.
And in that morning period, yeah, I mean, I have less of an issue with Knives and Scott because they literally never do anything. Like they're introduced as like we almost held hands once, but she got embarrassed.
That's
Which is
true.
not saying that it's great. I'm
How
not
ol-
endorsing this relationship by any
how
means,
old is
but I feel
Scott?
like what? He's
How
22.
he's 22.
22.
Okay. And she's
So like
17, right?
it's not good, but at least there's no like it's more just like they're like glorified friends.
Yeah. Plus,
So
like, the
it doesn't
film doesn't let him get away with it either. Like, it very much
no.
calls him out on being like, that's not okay, buddy."
No, it's very much like a like when they call it the morning period and they're like, "Fuck you, Scott." Like, what is wrong with you?
Mhm.
Um so I don't love it, but I don't think it's the worst thing.
It could be a lot worse. I mean, hell, there's, like,
Yeah.
shows like Pretty Little Liars and all kinds of stupid teen dramas out there right now who are, like, having teenagers marry their teachers when they're done with high school, and it's like, "Oh, gross. Stop saying that's okay."
I think if there was an actual like I feel like if there was a physical relationship to their component and they weren't just like going to Goodwill, I'd
Mm,
have a vastly different opinion.
or, like, going to the CD store.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But yeah, no way endorsing this or saying it's good or anything like that. Just saying like they're basically glorified friends.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Um
Um, we started touching on the Cornetto trilogy a little bit, and before we like jump into it more, I wanted to talk about how I didn't like my experience with these movies is I didn't know they were like I didn't really know anything about Edgar Wright, and I didn't know they were like a thing when I first got into it because the first one I ever watched was Hot Fuzz, and I was immediately like, "This
and
is the shit! I love this."
yeah.
I've seen it multiple times since. It's one of my favorite movies. It's so fucking good, and I was like, "This is hilarious." Then years later, I finally watched Shaun of the Dead, and I was like, "Oh, what? There's a lot of things going on here. That these two movies are very obviously like a thing together." And then that's when like I think we started talking about Edgar Wright after that, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's got his like special style going on, and this is part of the thing." So,
So my experience, I think Scott Pilgrim was my first Edgar Wright movie.
oh yeah, I think
Um
technically for me too. I was just thinking of like
yeah.
that trilogy in particular because that's like they're the most similar.
And then I watched Hot Fuzz for the first time in college.
Hmm.
Loved it, absorbed it like crazy, bought it immediately,
Yeah, it's
and
fantastic.
then eventually watched Shaun of the Dead, which took me a while to get to. And
Yes,
then
me
once I
too.
had all that under my belt, moved on to World's End when it came out.
Oh, you saw it when it came out?
Yes.
Oh, I watched it for the first time this weekend.
Oh, I don't know if I saw it. I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it when it came out on rental or DVD or whatever.
Hmm.
But I definitely watched it closer to release than not.
That makes sense. I found that one harder to keep my attention. Like I liked all of the components of
Weirder.
Edgar Wright's style, and like the story was kind of interesting, but it's a little slower to start when you finally like it's like halfway through when you finally get the alien components happening. And I found Simon Pegg's character really annoying.
I
Like
mean, Hot Fuzz takes time to get started a little bit.
that's true. I feel
And
like I'd
Shaun of
like
the
to hear
Dead,
that
I think,
better.
has that too. I think all of the Cornetto trilogy
Yeah.
has that slow start.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
depends on how engaged you are, I guess, with the characters in the beginning.
Yeah, I think
Maybe that's what it is.
Hot Fuzz just like captured me better with like its premise maybe or like how they were
Yeah.
setting up the characters, but yeah.
Yeah. And the editing of that like intro scene is really, really good of Hot Fuzz. And then you have like the interaction between him and his two superiors, and then you're just like cemented for life.
Mhm.
That's pretty much how it goes.
I do really
Is it?
love that the consistency also maintains with, like, the cast, that, like,
Yes.
all the people are the same constantly.
I didn't even realize it until I rewatched Shaun of the Dead this weekend that Martin Freeman also makes an appearance in Shaun of the Dead.
Does he really?
Yes. Yeah, he's in the background. He's like a boyfriend of somebody
Oh,
in the
shit.
thing.
Oh, yeah,
But he's also
he's in,
in.
like, that line with people for some reason.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's where he is. Yeah. That's and then of course he's one of the superiors in the
Mhm.
beginning of Hot Fuzz. So, he is in the entire Cornetto
He
trilogy.
is.
So, but yeah, I'm really interested in Baby Driver.
I loved it.
Okay.
I had a really fun time watching it. I was, like, working and watching it, and I kept not working to watch more of it.
If anyone at Paige's work is listening, she works diligently and does not take breaks ever.
Yeah, no, I am working from 8:30 to 5 p.m., no breaks.
For legal purposes, that was a joke she just made. Um, yeah, so I liked it. I got most of the way through it, but that was because of time, not because of thing. I wanted to watch enough of it that I got an idea of the style.
Yeah.
And my thing about Baby Driver, very, very good. Liked it a lot. Definitely gonna finish it. Huge departure in my eyes from normal Edgar Wright style.
Yeah, I was thinking that too because I was like, I can pick up on subtle little things here and there, like particularly the opening sequence with the car chase. I felt like there was little moments where I'm like, okay, I can see touches of Edgar Wright, but no, a lot of it I was like, well, this seems like very outside his wheelhouse.
Well done. He did a good
Oh
job.
yeah, it's
But
fantastic.
like it doesn't have that same. It has Edgar Wright moments as opposed to just Edgar Wright written in glitter all over the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's this thing at the very beginning, not the very very beginning, but like the beginning of Baby Driver, where there's this one super long take that, as far as I can tell, does not have cuts in it. It's the whole one where he's going to get coffee, he's walking down the street, and then he orders
Oh,
it
that is a
back.
long take.
As
I
far
was
as I
watching
can
that
tell,
scene and
no
I was
cuts.
like, this is great. What's going on here?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, no cuts, which is like I've never seen that in an Edgar Wright movie, and it's possible that maybe I haven't just watched enough of Edgar Wright stuff, but this felt like a massive departure for me from Edgar Wright style.
No, I think so too, because like all of his stuff is like very choppy edits and transitions, and not in like a bad way. It's just like there's a lot going on. But like I would describe Baby Driver as much more fluid with like its movement, if that makes sense.
I guess it's running with the because it's so embedded in the music, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
running off the music. There are a couple moments like it was after that long take with the coffee where he does the quick cuts between the top of the coffee cut and the faces
Yes.
that Cody and I were watching, and Cody was like, "Well, there's Edgar Wright."
Yeah.
And then there was a moment for me in the laundromat where it goes through a bunch of washing dryers, and it's all different colors. It's all the same color, so it was like red, blue, green, or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and that felt very Edgar Wright to me.
There's another scene like that where like Deborah grabs a coffee pot and you like see her walking the coffee pot and then it's like like a wipe and then like two coffee cups kind of thing. And I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, that seems like him.
yeah. There are a couple transitions that were like, because transitions are like Edgar Wright shit.
Yeah, it's his whole thing.
Like his like half of his style is just utterly mind-boggling, amazing transitions.
hmm
Um, like I think of like Scott Pilgrim, like that whole scene where like they're going to the party and it's just cut after cut, transition after transition, transition. That's just like match cuts and like I'm trying to remember exactly what it and the whole thing where like people saying his name and it's just like it's so good.
hmm
And it's basically just transitions for like a solid 30 seconds or whatever and it's
Yep.
still so
Yeah, he nails it every time.
and Baby Driver had a couple of those, but it wasn't constantly there the way it is
Yeah.
in his other films.
I
So
wonder
I just find that so interesting where I'm just like Cody was just like he's going for that Academy Award. Um
I think
which
it's
I
cool.
guess he did get nominated.
Did he? That poor guy. He deserves so much more.
Yeah, he deserves so much more credit, so much more money. People just give him whatever he wants.
I just have to also like rant for a minute about the opening scene with the fucking Subaru being the chosen car for the opening car chase. My Subaru loving heart was just so enthralled within 5 minutes. And it was
Ed
like
cares.
It was so
Go ahead.
great too because like you watch like fucking Fast and the Furious movies and there's all these dumb like shifting moves and like clutch presses and random levers that like don't exist in cars because they're trying to make you think it's like all cool and whatever. He was just like dropping the e-brake and drifting and that was his whole thing and I was like, "Yes, this is how this would happen."
I know nothing about cars, and I don't care about Subarus, but I'm glad that it made you happy.
It did. It made
It's
me very
so
happy.
it was nominated for Best Achievement in Film Editing, Best Achievement in Sound Mixing, and Best Achievement in Sound Editing.
Didn't win anything though.
Nope.
That's so sad.
And it was Golden Globe nominated for Ansel Elgort. Elgort?
Yeah. Ansel Elgort. I don't know. This
Yeah.
Fault
He
in Our
got he
Stars
got
guy.
nominated for a Golden Globe.
Oh, interesting. I thought Golden Globes was TV. Am I crazy? The
No, that's
Emmys?
the Emmys.
I don't know anything. Ugh. Yeah, no. It was a lot of fun. I have like a bone to pick with Deborah's character as a whole, but
Okay.
I don't know if I don't you want like spoilers or anything.
I don't care. Go
Okay.
for it.
She's just kind of there to be the love interest and that's it. And I thought she was going to have more importance than that, and it kind of frustrated me.
An actual manic pixie dream girl.
A little bit.
Mm.
Like she has no flaws. She's just this like cutesy, quirky girl who likes music that he falls in love with in a diner, who waits for him after getting out of prison. And you're just like, she has no personality outside of her relationship with him.
Yeah, it just seems kind of like go with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it because the whole music thing is endearing and adorable.
Yeah. But she's like ride or die instantly. She's like, "Yep, you're the one."
I mean, but yeah, she did feel, from what I saw, she did feel a little flat
She was, for sure.
to
It
me.
was my one bone to pick with the movie.
I almost feel like Baby Driver in particular focused so intently on Baby that I think it kind of lost other character development a little bit as composed
Yeah,
to
I can
his
agree with
other
that.
movies.
Yep. Because even the
Because like
villains feel
I'm
like
three
weird.
quarters of the way through, and I don't feel like I've seen a lot other than Baby, which isn't inherently a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with like a deep dive into character thing. It just, again, it's a little out of character for him. I feel like because he's used to, because obviously, because you think of Scott Pilgrim,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do everybody, but there's Scott, there's Ramona, there's Knives, and then his bandmates have some, like, not a lot, but like a little bit character development going on.
Yeah, and his roommate too, like
And yeah,
has like stuff going
yeah,
on. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and Shaun of the Dead, everybody who's in that group basically, except for the mother, has
Yeah.
their own stuff going on that they're dealing with and like their own personality traits. And I felt like this movie, I think, again, not saying that's a bad thing, but just
Mhm.
saying it just does feel like a bit of a departure from previous films that he's so zeroed in on Baby.
Yeah. Honestly, if you like, if you had showed me Baby Driver and like no one had said anything about Edgar Wright, I never would have guessed. I would not have aligned
No,
it with his previous films at all.
no, me neither. And that's what I mean is that Edgar Wright has such a distinctive style that I felt like this was such a great departure from that style that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I feel like it
I
shows he
mean,
has
this is good.
range.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not just like a one trick pony. Fuck you, I can do other things.
I guess so.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was curious as to why. I wish I had time with this. We're the worst. We start these episodes and we're just like, we didn't prepare enough for this.
No, I used to take notes. What a time.
I still take notes sometimes, but they're like very frantic and like scattered, and they're kind of just like a checklist almost of things I want to hit.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
but this one I just felt like there was so much that we could potentially cover that I didn't want to shoe like shoehorn us in.
Mm.
Um, but I wish that I'd had more time to like look at interviews and stuff and see what the Baby Driver was.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
Because that came out a couple years ago, right? It's fairly new.
2017, I
Yeah.
believe.
And he's working on a new movie, and I've already forgotten the name of it, but we're definitely going to cover it in a future episode. Gonna have a follow up. I don't think it has like a trailer or anything yet. I think it's very much still in production, if I remember correctly.
But it will still have an IMBD thing.
Mhm.
Beck. No, that's 2018.
It's something, something, something. I don't know.
It is not an IMDb. That is strange.
Is it not? It might be on his Wikipedia then. Un momento while we Google.
Yep.
He's
Sorry,
only
people.
46? Wow. Fuck you, dude. He's done so much.
Edgar Wright making us feel unimpressive.
Last Night in Soho. That's what it's called.
Uh, oh,
It,
yeah, that sounds familiar.
it's in post-production right now. Oh, it's coming out next year. A psychological
Assuming
horror
anything
film.
comes out next year.
That's true. Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Pardon me while I go crawl into a corner and cry.
Sorry, I was also looking up Edgar Wright. That's why I was on my phone. Yeah, it's just weird times.
Forever.
Was there anything specific that you wanted to go over in terms of, cause, like the Cornetto trilogy or anything? Did you watch all the movies with Mikey's?
I didn't. I only had time to watch his video on Shaun of the Dead and his video on Hot Fuzz because it had been a little bit since I'd watched either of those. And since I just watched The World's End this
Okay,
weekend, um, yeah, I had a thought. It died.
Mikey is excellent people, by the way.
Yeah, his videos are really funny.
Yeah. Also, the editing is like ridiculous. Like the editing and the is just makes me mad. That's how good it is.
That's how people get far on YouTube is rad editing.
Yep. So, but yeah, I was really impressed with because he talks about in Shaun of the Dead, particularly specifically how Edgar Wright says, "What was it? You fight for the things that matter."
Hmm.
And I feel like that's another cornerstone of his movies, on top of like
Oh yeah, and every
moving
single
on and
one.
growing up, is like you fight for what you want and for what
Yeah.
matters. I feel like he's got pretty consistent themes throughout his movies.
Yeah, that is really
And in Shaun of the
applicable.
Dead, it's like in Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim, it's like you literally fight.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess Hot Fuzz too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they're fighting for in The World's End. Can we just talk about the ending of The World's End and how completely bonkers it is?
That's what I remember when I was watching The World End. That's my primary impression that's still left, is just like, what is happening?
Like the last 10, 15 minutes, you're just like, what just
Yeah,
happened?
I remember being like confused and just being like, I don't. This movie has changed
Yeah.
dramatically
I almost
in
was
a way that
kind of annoyed. I was like, I could have had a little bit more of whatever this post-apocalyptic world is than, trying to drink at 13 pubs in one night or whatever it was.
like Shaun of the Dead has a better kind of like introduction. Like I think it handles like the zombie theme better, because in the beginning everyone kind of acts like zombies and there's a whole like it's dealing with a theme better, and
Yeah.
World End kind of feels more out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like unclear. Like people haven't seen it in The World's End. That's like small town has been taken over by this alien race. Basically, it's like replacing people with like robot versions of themselves. They have the option to like assimilate with the alien group, but most people say no. So then they just chuck you and or place you with somebody. And it turns out they've done this all over the world, and they have like a bunch of little alien settlements. And then they fucking I don't know, they talked to the main AI dude, and they were just like, "No, we don't want you here." And he's like, "All right, I'll fuck off." And then the fucking world ends.
If you had to like pin down a theme or what the movie's trying to say, aside from the obvious like you got to grow up thing,
you
can you
know,
think of one?
I don't know because the whole "you gotta grow up" thing seems like it's the theme, but Simon Pegg's character doesn't get punished for it. If anything, he gets rewarded for having a personality that doesn't grow up, and he gets to have like the robot version of his young friends as his new friends, and he's just like wandering the post-apocalyptic world acting like a shitbag all over the place.
Interesting.
Yeah, like he did.
That feels like a writing departure a little bit too.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I just that one was like the most batshit crazy to me. I was like, I have no idea what I just watched or what my takeaway was from that.
Weird, because Hot Fuzz ends with them murdering a bunch of older people.
Yeah,
Just like straight up shotgunning older people in the face.
it's hilarious. Sorry, old people.
It's really like I mean that's another, I guess, cornerstone of Edgar Wright's work, which is just like it's really fucking funny.
Oh, he's
He's just a
hilarious.
really clever writer.
And they're really gory movies too, but like
Mhm.
it's not bothersome. It almost contributes to how comical it is.
I mean, Shaun of the Dead got to me but I'm of course very sensitive to blood.
Yeah.
So like there were moments of Shaun of the Dead where I was like, nope, no, no,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't necessarily call them excessively gory, and I don't think that I think it's has a more of a point.
Yeah. It definitely they have
Sorry, there
their
was like a
moments.
yawn in that sentence somewhere.
I just had another thought. What the heck was it? Oh, I was gonna say I didn't realize Baby Driver was rated R until they started shooting people, and I was like, oh, they're showing things. That was another one where like I feel like sometimes people when they get the R rating they take it too far and they're like that means I can do whatever the fuck I want and go crazy with the gore and the everything that makes it an R rated movie rated R. But like he didn't overdo it. I felt like
Edgar Wright ever does anything that doesn't serve something in the movie.
yeah
Like it's got to serve the themes, it's got to serve the style, it's got to serve the writing. It has to serve something in the film, otherwise it has no purpose or business in his life.
right.
Is basically how I. That's what I think.
He's like the
Is
exact opposite of Marvel.
yeah, yeah. Everyone should go watch. Um, if you want to get, it depends what kind of Marvel fan you are. If you want to get angry, or you're just really interested in the flaws, there's an essay by Patrick Willems about why are Marvel movies so ugly, and it's really fucking good.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I chimed in with that, but like
I brought
Patrick
I
Willems is
brought it
also
up. I threw
excellent.
Marvel under the bus. That's fine. We
Yeah,
can, we can double down on it.
yeah. Marvel movies, good, formulaic to a fault,
Yeah.
and they all
Unless
have the same style. Like the Russo brothers,
except
I
Thor
hate them.
Ragnarok. I have to stand up for Thor Ragnarok because
Well,
Taika
no, but
Waititi
Thor
is
Ragnarok,
genius.
yeah, no, but that's because it wasn't directed by like. It's the same thing with Captain Marvel has. I mean, Thor Ragnarok is on a whole other level,
Yeah.
but like, I mean, Captain Marvel has its flaws, but it's trying to do something.
It's much better than a lot of the other films.
But all the movies by the Russo brothers suck. Fight me.
I will also die on that hill with her. So
Yes, we are the unpopular opinion train. The Russo brothers are
yeah,
terrible writers, terrible directors, and what they do to women is appalling.
they make bad decisions.
Yeah,
We don't like them.
fight me.
Yep.
I don't care.
Wait, I love how we've totally derailed. All I
Yeah,
had to do was
sorry.
bring up Marvel, and it was like,
Yeah, sorry. This is what we do. But I do think to bring it kind of back to the Russo brothers have a style. It's
Mhm.
very distinctive. You can watch a Russo brother movie and go, "Oh, this is a Russo brother movie."
Yeah.
But it's boring and terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus Edgar Wright, who has a very distinct style. You watch it and you're like, "That's an Edgar Wright movie,"
Yeah.
and you're like, "This is delightful. I'm delighted."
Yeah.
So that's my bringing it back to Edgar Wright thing. Is style having a distinctive style does not automatically like make you a good filmmaker.
Absolutely. I can agree with that. You said something before we started the episode about him being kind of niche, and I was thinking about that because I was thinking about how movies with Mike he also mentioned that he like never takes home awards, and I'm wondering like do you have any thoughts on why the film industry seems to like not recognize his
He's sleeping
talents?
on Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're sleeping on him.
Like they're all over Wes Anderson like nobody's business, so I'm like why doesn't Edgar Wright get any recognition?
I mean, he makes like smaller budget movies. I mean, I'm almost wondering if Noah's in the chat, he might have a better opinion than I do. Um, but I feel like he makes niche movies.
Mhm.
Like if you think about Scott Pilgrim, it's wonderful and delightful, but there's a lot of jokes and nuance and things happening in there that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily get. Like my mother could watch Scott Pilgrim and be like, "What is going on? I don't understand."
My mom would do the same thing, yeah.
Like, why is he getting lights up? What's the like? Like what is this super highway in his head? Like, what are they talking about?
Mhm.
And I feel like it's kind of the same thing with their Canada trilogy, where there's a lot to relate to and there's a lot going on, but I feel like it hits a very specific audience and is going towards very specific people.
I guess that
Does
makes
that make
sense.
sense?
Yeah.
Like he's niche in his audience as well.
Yeah. Plus
I think more so than we would necessarily pick up on because we are in that niche audience.
Yeah. And I feel like
But
people have a hard time with British humor sometimes too. So like the Cornetto trilogy might be harder for some people.
yeah, Americans anyway.
Yeah, yes. Americans sometimes do not. I feel like sometimes British humor is a little wittier, a little more fast paced.
Sharper.
Yes. So like sometimes it goes over Americans' heads. That's not their fault.
But yeah, thing about Edgar Wright is that he has a smaller fan base,
Hmm.
but very impassioned. And I think the thing about Edgar Wright too is that even if you recognize his style, so even if you look at the Cornetto trilogy, you're like, that's all the same. I think there's a smaller group of people who know them as Edgar Wright movies versus just Shaun of the Dead,
Yep.
who are like Edgar Wright fans as opposed to just I like Shaun of the Dead. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, they probably more associate them with like Simon Pegg or something because he's like more recognizable.
Yeah. Like I feel like to Edgar Wright fans are niche in themselves,
That makes sense.
but they're very impassioned. We're a very passionate group.
I'm definitely a fan now. Like having
Yeah,
watched all his major films, I feel like he does really good work. I'm looking forward to his new stuff. I don't know shit about it. And I'm still like, yeah, I can't wait. It'll be great.
his audience though. I feel like Baby Driver widened that audience a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's definitely got its weird things, and the music is a little weird, and the characters are a little weird. But it's definitely I feel like has a much wider audience than like Scott Pilgrim.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I feel like Scott Pilgrim is his most niche one because like A, it's a comic book movie and like it very much mostly appeals to like our age group and younger because there's so many little pieces of like nostalgia in there that like we enjoy watching.
For sure, I agree. It's just a weird movie that I don't feel like people like us notice how weird it is because all the things make sense to us
Yeah,
and
because
we
we're
just
weird.
go with the flow. Um, but it is a very weird movie if you're just like the average person walking in.
You're just like clicking through the freaking channels and you're like, huh, I guess I'll watch this, and you'd be like, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
But Baby Driver, I don't think has that. I think Baby
No.
Driver is more accessible than any of his other movies.
Yeah, it's like it's an action flick. I feel like anybody could watch it and you'd just be like, ooh, this movie is very well crafted.
I think Edgar Wright is one of those talented filmmakers where even if you don't understand editing, you don't understand filmmaking, you have no concept of how things break down,
Hmm.
you're impressed by it. You just don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, you know something really cool is happening, but
Hmm.
you couldn't necessarily articulate why. But Edgar Wright crossed that barrier where like he can impress you with his editing without you having to realize that he's doing that.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
if that was a ramble or if that made sense.
No, it makes sense because like that's like exactly my experience is like I didn't know any of the terms for the transitions or what his filmmaking style, but I just remember watching like Hot Fuzz and being like, I don't know what's happening here, but it's really cool and I'm
It's
enjoying
super fucking
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Edgar Wright is that kind of filmmaker
Yeah.
where he'll impress you even if you don't have the language to articulate why.
Right. Yeah. Which is like I think hard to do because sometimes like real master filmmakers with like their really niche styles go too far in the other way where like you have to be like a freaking professional film critic to like get it.
Sorry, I'm reading the chat and
Those
it's
two.
just like, yeah. It's basically I feel like confirming everything that I just said.
Yeah, Scott Pilgrim is like the movie of our generation.
Yeah. So, um do we have cuz we're hitting up on our normal length, aren't we?
Yep. So if anyone
Okay.
has questions that they want to ask or final thoughts that they want to share, feel free to call them. I mean, what did I just say?
Free to type them in the chat.
I was looking at my
Let
phone
us
briefly because I have dinner arriving promptly at 7, and I think phone call. I don't know.
turned out relatively cohesive despite the fact that we
Oh
had
yeah.
no plans.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so my Noah is saying that Simon Pegg's character in The World's End is indeed annoying, but
Mm,
there is also a tragic element to him that of someone who peaked as a teenager and can only find happiness in trying in vain to recreate the best night of his life.
that's fair. We all know people like that who are still stuck in the hometowns we grew up in who didn't peak anywhere. They peaked in high school football and then never did anything else.
And definitely, I think trying to capture that feeling because I feel like there's definitely a relatability, even if that wasn't your experience of trying to recapture what things were like. Just because
That's
they were
true.
simpler and easier, and you didn't necessarily pay bills, and
Right. You didn't have consequences, basically. You were like, I can just do whatever.
yeah. So I feel like there's that there's oh, I think there's regardless an element of relatability
Hmm.
to just wanting to go back to when things were. I mean, for some of us easier. Maybe for some of us it was harder,
Right, yeah.
but
Plus, it is a fun juxtaposition, too, to his friends who are all like, you need to grow up, but their lives aren't exactly, like, perfect
peaches
either.
and gravy. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone's stuck in their own shit in different ways, I think.
Thank you, Noah.
Energetic and invincible. That is definitely something I haven't felt since I was like 17. Ah.
I feel like the last time I felt energetic and invincible, which is coming from a comment that we have, is was like when I graduated from college the first time.
Ah, really? Graduating from college the first time you felt energetic and invincible?
Yep.
Fascinating.
Yep. No,
I just felt dead inside, but I was also I had a very rough college experience, so
I was ready to take on the world when I graduated from college.
fair.
All right. Any other comments? Anything else people want to say? These is your last chance.
Yeah, we'll never speak to you again.
Not coming back.
We're done on
No.
the topic, no.
So next week is Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yep. I have done no
I
work on
think
that.
that assuming Paige gets on her shit and teaches me how to stream,
I put it on my calendar.
we might be streaming it a little bit before we talk about it on Tuesday.
Will we? You might.
I might.
You might. Yeah. Okay.
And you can come on and talk,
I can do that.
potentially.
That would be very helpful because then I won't have to watch a million videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Assassin's Creed next week. Hooray. That should be a lot of fun.
It'll be our first video game in a while, I feel like.
Yeah, it really does feel like it's been a while. So
Yeah.
I'm looking
So,
forward to it. So those are some of my favorites. But yeah.
as always, add us if you have ideas or comments or anything.
Yep. There's
We
also
like hearing
a
from
handy
people.
suggestion box in the description area that I always forget to mention, that if you want to submit episode ideas, that you can do that in our profile. So yeah. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Yeah.